Alright, you should have already been through now Act 1, Scene 1 of Taming of the Shrew. Now we are going to look at Act 1, Scene 2 of Taming of the Shrew. And if you remember at the end of Act 1, Scene 1, we're introduced to a few characters, Bianca and Lucentio. Lucentio falls head over heels in love with Bianca, and if you remember the line, I burn, I pine, I perish, Tranio, if I achieve not this young modest girl. He will die if he doesn't have her. And again, this is just based on how she looked. He doesn't even see the negative qualities. Tranio's trying to talk him out of it. Did you notice her sister? But no, he saw her coral lips to move. She did perfume the air. These are all lines that Lucentio says to show us how we only really see the positive in people when we are so infatuated. So, and then the scene ends with their plan. And if you remember what their plan was, it was that they needed to disguise Lucentio as a tutor, but then they needed to find somebody to play the new Lucentio in town, go to school, entertain his family's friends, things like that. And that would then be Tranio, because nobody really knows what Lucentio looks like at this point. So all of that is very feasible. And the one thing that they had to do was they had to change clothes. So what we're going to do real quick is we're going to look at a character map here to kind of get everybody on the same page as far as what characters we have been introduced to and how they are related to each other. So you have Baptista at the top here. Baptista's daughters are Catherine and Bianca. All right, Bianca. Lucentio falls in love with Bianca. All right, but she also has a couple of other suitors, Gremio and Hortensio. And if you remember, Gremio and Hortensio are actually upset with Baptista because he will not let Bianca marry until Kate gets married. And if we learned anything about Kate from the first scene of Act 1, it's that she is not the most pleasant individual. So she will be having a difficult time getting hitched, and in the meantime, nobody can marry Bianca. And again, remember, this is they're considering all of the factors here, including dowry. So Baptista is a very wealthy man, and having a young, modest female such as Bianca, who is also wealthy, is just a bonus. So she would be highly vied for. And Lucentio also falls in love. And Lucentio is from a wealthy family. His father is Vincentio. And remember, he has that servant Tranio, who he talks to about school and things like that. And then he's got his other servant, Biondello. Now, one thing we should probably make note here is that Lucentio is now going to be disguised as a tutor. And I'll put that in here so we remember. And Tranio is going to be disguised as Lucentio. So now, it's only going to get a little more complicated here as people are going to start disguising themselves as other people in order to vie for a female's affection. And this all kind of ties into that whole idea of appearance and reality. What is real? And if you manipulate that reality in order to create feelings, does that mean those feelings are false, or are they real? And these will be all discussions that we'll have in class, so be prepared to talk about that. Now, a couple of characters we're going to get introduced to here in Scene 2 are Petruchio and Grumio, and we'll talk about them in a little bit more detail at a later time. But here's the character map. You're going to need to understand this concept. I will be asking you to draw out a character map similar to this, so be aware that you're going to need to review this probably from time to time. So now we'll listen to the beginning of Scene 2. And this is where we're going to be introduced to Petruchio and his servant Grumio, who are over here in our character map. And they are to be assumed to get involved with Kate here eventually. Petruchio is friends with Hortensio, so he's coming to his friend's house, Hortensio's house in Padua. And there's kind of a little prank here early on, and a little play on words with Petruchio and his not so bright servant Grumio. So let's see how that plays out at the beginning of Scene 2 of Act 1. And notice how Shakespeare is going to use language once again to tie in where Petruchio is from and what he's here for, etc.
while I take my leave to see my friends in Padua, but of all my best beloved and approved friend Hortensio, and I trow this is his house. Here, Sir Grumio, knock, I say.
Knock, sir? Whom should I knock? Is there any man who's rebused, your worship?
Villain,
So,
I say, knock me
he
here.
thinks he means hit
Knock
somebody.
your ear, sir.
Petruchio
Why, sir,
means
what am I,
knock
sir?
on the
I should
door.
knock your ear, sir.
Villain, I say, knock me at this gate and rap me well, or I'll knock your knave's pate.
My master is ground quarrelsome. I should knock you first, and then I know after who comes by the worst.
So Grumio says, well, I'll hit you
Fate,
before
sir,
I hit
I'll
me.
not knock, I'll ring it. I'll try how
So
you
Petruchio
can
becomes
so far.
violent.
Help, master! Help, the master is mad!
Now knock when I bid you, sirrah villain!
Hello, what's the matter? My old friend Grumio, my good friend Petruchio, how do you all at the Verona?
Signor Hortensio, come here to part the fray. Con tutto il cuore ben trovato, may I say.
Alla nostra casa benvenuto, molto amorato, signor mio Petruchio. Rise, Grumio, rise, we will compound this quarrel.
Oh, nice. It's no matter, sir, what he letters in Latin. If this be not a lawful cause for me to leave his service, look you, sir.
So now they're trying to explain
And
the
wrap him
situation
soundly, sir. Well,
to Hortensio,
was it
who
then
came on the
sin
scene.
to use his master so? Being perhaps for aught I see 32 a pip out. And would to God I had well knocked it first, and had not Grumio come by the worst.
A senseless villain.
And he gets hit.
Good Hortensio, I bade the rascal knock upon your gate and could not get it for my heart to do it.
Knock at the gate!
So Grumio's like, oh, that's what you wanted me to do?
Spake you not these words plain? Sirrah, knock me here. Rap me here. Knock me well and knock me soundly. And come you now with knocking at the gate.
Sirrah, be gone, or talk not, I advise you.
Petruchio, patience, I am Grumio's pledge. Why, this a heavy chance twixt him and you, your ancient, trusty, pleasant servant Grumio. And tell me now, sweet friend, what happy gale blows you to Padua here from old Verona?
Okay, so we're about to find out why Petruchio is in Padua from Verona, and all of that detail as far as where he's from and that type of thing, and who his parents are, and all of that's going to come into play here through what he says. But it's important to understand why he's there. And also it's important to kind of understand what kind of character Petruchio is here. He beats his servant over a small misunderstanding, and he beats up his servant. And Hortensio actually has to break them up. So it's an interesting character in Petruchio, a very dominant character.
Such wind as scatters young men through the world to seek their fortunes farther than at home, where small experience grows. But in a few, Signor Hortensio, thus it stands with me. Antonio, my father, is deceased, and I have thrust myself into this maze, happily to wive and thrive as best I may. Crowns in my purse I have, and goods at home, and so I'm come abroad to see the world.
Okay, so basically why is Petruchio in town? To wive and thrive as best I may, is what he says. So he wants to get married. And he says he has crowns in purse, so he's rich. So now he wants to see the world and find a wife. So this plays right into Hortensio's plan, because if you remember at the end of scene 1, Hortensio and Gremio, the older gentlemen who are both vying for Bianca, they came up with a pact to get Bianca married, or to get Kate married off so that Bianca can be married. So these two are working together. So Hortensio, notice what he does here, very strategic. He's going to introduce the idea of marrying a very wealthy woman, but he's going to kind of imply that she's not perfect.
Petruchio, shall I then come roundly to thee and wish thee to a shrewd, ill-favoured wife? Thou'dst thank me but a little for my counsel, and yet I'll promise thee she shall be rich, and very rich. But thou art too much my friend, and I'll not wish thee to her.
So notice what he says. He says, you know, I could, you know, just come right out and say, you know, I do know this Shrew, you know, who you could marry, but I wouldn't do that to my best friend. You know, I wouldn't wish that upon my best friend, even though she be rich and very rich. So he kind of dangles that carrot in front of him, and you can almost hear Petruchio's ears perk up, and notice what he says right here.
Signor Hortensio, twixt such friends as we, few words suffice, and therefore, if thou know one rich enough to be Petruchio's wife, as wealth is burden of my wooing dance, be she as foul as was Florentius' love, as old as Sibyl, and as cursed and shrewd as Socrates' Xanthippe, or a worse, she moves me not, or not removes at least affection's edge in me, were she as rough as are the swelling Adriatic seas. I come to wive it wealthily in Padua, if wealthily, then happily in Padua.
So this is Petruchio's motivation here. Notice what he says. First of all, he describes, using a variety of metaphors and similes, she could be as foul as was Florentius' love, as old as Sibyl, as cursed and shrewd as Socrates' Xanthippe. He uses a lot of metaphors and similes to explain, I don't care what she's like, because the bottom line for Petruchio is right here. I come to wive it wealthily in Padua, if wealthily, then happily in Padua. That's an important line that you'll need to remember. The bottom line for Petruchio is the money. He wants to marry wealthy. Okay, so it doesn't really matter that she's a shrew. So, and Hortensio, obviously by dangling that carrot in front of him, knew with his friend that that would be motivation enough to get him to think about marrying Kate, which then opens up the door for Bianca to get married. So Grumio is going to take some shots here at his master, you know, joke about the situation and that kind of thing. And Hortensio is going to try to maybe talk him out of it, but he's going to say, you know, since we've gone this far, I might as well share a little bit more about her with you, and convince him even more that he needs to marry Katharina.
You see, and he tells you flatly what his mind is. Why, give him gold enough and marry him to a puppet or an aglet baby or an old trot with not a tooth in her head, though she have as many diseases as 52 horses. Why, nothing comes amiss, so money comes with all.
Money comes with all.
Since we are stepped thus far in...
Since we've talked about it this much.
Continue that I broached in jest.
He didn't broach it in jest. He was being serious.
Petruchio help thee to a wife, with wealth enough, and young and beauteous, brought up as best becomes a gentlewoman. Her only fault, and that is for faults enough, is that she is intolerable cursed, and shrewd, and froward, so beyond all measure that were my state far worse than it is, I would not wed her for a mine of gold.
Hortensio, peace, thou knowest not gold's effect. Tell me her father's name, and 'tis enough. For I will board her, though she chide as loud as thunder when the clouds in autumn crack.
So, Hortensio says, I could be the poorest person ever, and I would not marry her for a mountain of gold. And Petruchio's response is kind of interesting. Again, we learn a little bit about Petruchio. Thou knowest not gold's effect. I will board her, though she chide as loud as thunder when the clouds in autumn crack. So I will tame her, I will calm her, I will marry her, just because of who she is and his reliance on status. So now once Hortensio says who her father is, and family had a lot to do with wealth and status in Elizabethan England, it's going to even persuade him more, and notice his reaction.
Father is Baptista Minola, an affable and courteous gentleman. Her name is Katharina Minola, renowned in Padua for her scolding tongue.
I know her father, though I know not her, and he knew my deceased father well. I will not sleep, Hortensio, till I see her.
I will not sleep till I see her.
Let me be thus bold with you to give you over at this first encounter, unless you will accompany me thither.
I pray you, sir, let him go while the humour lasts. Ay, my word, and she knew him as well as I do, she would think scolding would do little good upon him. She may perhaps call him half a score knaves or so. Why, that's nothing. And he begin once, he'll rail in his rope tricks. I tell you what, sir. And she's standing but a little.
So Grumio knows his master well.
In her face and so
he knows what he can do to her.
No more eyes to see with all that a cat. You know him not, sir. Tarry.
So Grumio says, you don't know my master. You don't know what he's going to do to her. And he kind of sets up the idea that Petruchio has a plan in mind already, and that he knows what his master is capable of. So now Hortensio is going to introduce the idea of, I want to get closer with the other sister. So, and that we'll have to continue in the next video. So you want to click on part 2 of scene 2 after watching this one.